Hello, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about the Black Widow film that just came out, and we're going to talk about my thoughts. I am really excited to jump into this. So before we begin, I just wanted to let you guys know my understanding of where this takes place in the timeline. I don't know if there's this very specific area where this is supposed to take place, but in my opinion, I'm not really sure of like the duration of this film and when it's supposed to take place in relation to Civil War. I know and realize that it starts like probably in the middle of or right after Civil War ends, and I'm assuming that the end of this film takes place before the post-credit scene in that film. So my question is that actually the case? And also with that, like how much time takes place between like the airport battle and the post-credit scene in Civil War as well? I'm honestly not too sure because it says there's a 2-week time gap in between the end of Black Widow and the post-credit scene there. So I'm a little bit confused about that because I assumed originally when I watched Civil War that in fact there wasn't that big of a time gap in between when that film ends and that post-credit scene. So I'm not sure if this change that they made or if this was always the case and we just didn't really get a definitive answer on that. Yeah, I just wanted to express that real quick. So yeah, let's get on with the video. So the first actual piece of this film that I want to talk about is the whole intro scene, as well as the actual intro like sequence where they have like the Black Widow title card, stuff like that going on. So first off, we have a great insight into the past of Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, her character prior to becoming an Avenger, prior to Iron Man 2. And what we see here is her as a child, I think it starts out with her walking around her town and then going and seeing her family. And then we get into some more spicy things after that where they end up having to go on the run, leaving the country. And I think this was just very, very well done here as like an opening scene prior to anything really happening in the present day. It gave us a insight as to what Natasha's childhood was for, I believe they said it was 3 years. And then we see like these two kids uprooted against their will, and they have to go and live a life as Black Widows through the Red Room and stuff like that. And it was just very well done to give us that like very quick insight into the past of this character and all these characters that we're going to see later on in the film. Specifically here, we also do see the family dynamic, especially for the two kids, being that like they're so young, they actually do see these people as parent figures. And we find out later on that Yelena actually didn't know that it was all a lie to begin with. Then we get into the actual title sequence where I think this is what actually blew me away. And I think to me, this was the most emotional part of the film to me. Not anyone potentially dying, not anything that happened after this, but it was like the power of the score. I don't actually remember what the song is here. I've heard it before, I just don't know the actual song's name. But the power of the score, along with the different scenes that we're seeing from basically, I think it was supposed to show like child trafficking because they're kidnapping children and then training them to be child soldiers, right? So I guess that's what it would be, even though like I guess it's a government entity doing it, right? I think the Red Room was controlled by a government entity, but that could also be different. They didn't really specify who controlled the Red Room or if it was just a completely private agency and that's why no one else has seen or heard of it. Up until like now and after, especially after Black Widow supposedly killed, I forget what his name is, but the leader of the Red Room. And yeah, I just think that like that scene in and of itself made this film start off on another level from really anything that we had seen in the MCU. In this one in particular, it was just so powerful to see because it also seemed to be very real, There was nothing, there was no superpowers, there was nothing crazy. We weren't in space, we weren't in a huge opening battle sequence. It was just seeing these kids having been taken away from their families, being left in shipping containers, being taught to shoot people, or shoot bullets, teaching them ballet, or all this, that, and the other thing. Like, it was so fascinating as well as powerful to watch on screen. That being said, let's actually talk about the Red Room itself. So in the MCU, it seems to be this organization that relates. I mean, I'm assuming there's still supposed to be a Russian organization, but at the very least now they may have branched away, kind of similar to how Hydra had branched away from Germany. And I think that's kind of the same scenario here, where Hydra is not necessarily a bunch of Nazis, as well as these people in the Red Room aren't necessarily associated with the Russian government. And I think that during the Cold War, so to speak, it would have been different, I guess. And then Alexei may have just or not Alexei, the guy who's in charge of the Red Room, whom again I don't remember his name. I guess he just branched off, especially maybe after he supposedly died. Maybe then he decided, like, you know, I'm just going to take this off on my own and see what happens here. And I thought that was very interesting to see, because it's like another entity similar in terms of their scope and level to things like Hydra as well as S.H.I.E.L.D. So I thought that was very fascinating, and it seemed very believable in the way that they introduced it and brought it about. With the Red Room as well, I must say it's truly terrifying to think that this organization in the MCU, like, just kidnapped kids, basically provided them with, I think it was, I don't think all of them had, like, the chemical induced, like, not hallucination, but like basically mind controlling them like that. But some of them, like Natasha, was supposedly just brainwashed. And honestly, like, that in and of itself is like crazy to think about. And then on top of that, there is like the forced sterilization of these Black Widows. And wow, like, just the whole scope of this film seemed so different from anything that we've seen in the MCU thus far. We've seen war, we've seen horrible dictators, like Thanos. I would consider him kind of like a dictator, and even Loki just wanting to rule over people. Like, these two characters have been, in particular, have been like, they've been crazy to watch on screen, but they're not on the same, it's not the same thing. Like, this in and of itself is not like you're, you know, blatantly trying to kill a bunch of people. It's, you are controlling and taking away the free will of these individuals to then control their larger world. And I think that that's so crazy to think about, quite frankly. Now let's talk about the family dynamic between all of the characters, and this also relates to kind of the chemistry between all of the actors involved. And I must say, like, especially the core four family members, it seemed so believable to me that they were a family, despite them saying that they've only been together for 3 years in Nat and Yelena's early childhood. It was only 3 years of their life, but still, when they all come back together, it feels like a family. The two parents, Alexei and Melina, they believe, like, they feel like people that are married. They feel like people that truly care about each other, and the same is said about their feelings towards Yelena and Nat. And it's just so interesting. And even the dynamic between Natasha and Yelena as well, like, it all seems very believable to me. And I really appreciate that, because having all of these brand new characters that we're introducing and saying have been such a huge part of a pre-established person's life, it's very difficult to pull something like that off, because first off, we haven't heard about any of these people before, despite them having had a very clear impact on Natasha's backstory. But it is believable, considering how guarded and secretive Natasha is because of how she was raised, and specifically because she herself is a spy. Like, it makes a lot of sense, and on top of that, it is executed, I think, to perfection. They did such a good job, and I don't know what they could have done to make it any better in terms of being a more believable family dynamic. But the bickering, the disagreements, the coming together, stuff like that, it all felt super believable. The one thing I think was a little bit lackluster in terms of the film overall was in one character in particular, and that would be Taskmaster. I think that she was kind of like underutilized and a bit of a disappointment to me, specifically because I think Taskmaster can be such a formidable combatant and such a cool character to have to go up against. I mean, there are few characters that I would probably think off the top of my head that could really go up against someone like Taskmaster, especially once he has learned your moves and the moves of those around you. Like, it is a formidable, this is a formidable opponent, but he ended up being the reveal that he was actually the villain's daughter. So, not he, despite the fact that, to me, I personally think this Taskmaster character with the helmet on looked like a dude. Maybe, like, that's supposed to be saying that she was genetically modified somehow, or the suit just provides that appearance to her because of the way that it's fit and stuff like that. But it very clearly to me is, I'm assuming all of those scenes was a stunt man and not like, just because the figure didn't seem like a female at all until that reveal, and the only time that the figure seemed like a female was when the mask was off. That's just my opinion. I mean, maybe I just didn't pay close enough attention, and also, like, I can't look back at the film at specific spots because I watched it in theaters. So I don't know for sure if that's the case, but up until the reveal, I flat out thought that it was a dude, partially because that is what I saw, I've seen in like the cartoons and stuff. I know Taskmaster is a male in the comics and stuff like that, but I don't know, I feel like that reveal and even the way that the character was designed was lacking to me because of how interesting I think that character could actually be. And again, I don't know too much about Taskmaster. I know his ability is that he can copy anyone's moves that he's fighting, but they changed it to be some type of AI type of thing where the information's loaded into her head. And I don't know, I just felt like that wasn't as interesting to me as a guy actually just, or even female. Like, it didn't have to be a male version of Taskmaster, but to me, I feel like having that actually be just something that this person is capable of memorizing and understanding and mimicking, I think that would have been so much cooler to me than having it be, oh, all the fighting moves that these other people have done have just been loaded into this person's brain. Just, that, to me, that's just not as interesting. Next, with the final battle in and of itself, there really wasn't a huge, big, singular battle sequence that we get for pretty much any other film at this point. I feel like this one, it was like, we have a huge cataclysmic looking thing happening, which is the Red Room falling from the sky, and debris and pieces of the building and whatever falling everywhere. And that looked cool, and still it was very, very grand, but the fight in and of itself wasn't very grandiose. I mean, you had the Red Guardian versus Taskmaster at one point, but you only really saw pieces of that. And I think that this is partially because of Natasha's character's actual strengths are more relating to deception and figuring things out and really manipulating people, because she is a spy, and that's what she does with the leader of the Red Room. She is ending up able to find out all the information that she wants, and that was really one of the climactic moments of the film. The battle sequence to me was more of like the I guess a little bit of a gravy on top. It wasn't really the pinnacle of the film. Like, at that point, the main villain is already dead when things actually start to pop off and everyone's falling from the sky. Even the battle sequence with all of the widows is cut short. I mean, it's only a few minutes long, and I to me, like, right after that, I thought about, you know, the battle sequence of the Avengers. I mean, that was huge. And I mean, maybe overall it was probably around the same length of time when you consider everything from like them getting into the Red Room to this point. It was probably around the same time frame, but to me, it just felt like this battle sequence was not the main focus, and I thought that was very, very interesting and a very bold choice to me, I would say, because especially with these superhero films, it's like, you know, people expect the action to be like everything to end in a huge brawl or a huge big fight, and though we got pieces of that with the battle with Taskmaster at the end as well, it's all cut short. It's all cut short because every battle, every real battle, is stopped by that little mist or that vial or whatever being sprayed on them, because none of these people actually want to be fighting. And this was just a very unique way to end the film, and I think the film overall is also very, very unique and interesting to me. Okay, so the second to last thing that we're going to talk about is the post-credit scene for this film. I personally think that I wish we got a little bit more, just because I wanted to get some more insight as to what's coming for the future, and maybe something that has nothing to do with the Black Widow film, but it seemed like, you know, that would be, I mean, it seems like that's no longer going to be the route for Marvel. I think they're being a little bit more sparse with the information that they're providing us moving forward, and it's more like you just have to wait and see what's going to happen. And I think that that's also a good idea on Marvel's part, because now that we're kind of used to getting more and more snippets of things, we are now having to wonder and think about what's going to have to come next. That being said, we do see two things. The first is a scene that's apparently right before the raft being like infiltrated by Steve Rogers, and that is that it seems like Black Widow is going to be flying there with the Quinjet, but that kind of confused me a little bit, just because they said there was a time jump of 2 weeks, and as I said earlier, I assumed that the post-credit scene from, or the ending from Civil War took place probably, you know, a lot earlier in when this film is supposed to be taking place. I didn't think that it would be like 3 weeks. It was probably like a 3-week time gap throughout this film. Like, that's what it seemed like. It was you have Black Widow, then she's on the run after Civil War, and then at some point she meets up with her sister, which I'm assuming all this travel does have to take some semblance of time, and then at the end we have like a 2-week time jump. So it's probably around 3 weeks of this overall timeline of this film. So that's, to me, that was a little bit confusing to me. But the other thing that we see here is Yelena visiting a grave meant for Black Widow, and then Val comes about and she's like, hey, look who killed your sister. Clearly it's Hawkeye, Clint Barton, or maybe he's going by Ronan right now. I really don't know. And I thought this was also a little bit weird, because doesn't Yelena know that Clint and Black Widow, and Natasha is that they're friends? I mean, I feel like that she would have known that, because throughout the film, like, they talk about Budapest and everything that happened there, and stuff like that, and how her and Clint had to hide around, stuff like that. So I personally was a little bit confused by that in particular, but yeah, I guess we're going to see Yelena again in the Hawkeye series when she's going to face off against Clint Barton. That's going to be fun to see. I'm very curious to know how that battle is going to go about, but and also how they're going to resolve that. I mean, I'm assuming Clint's going to have to explain to her that that's not what happened. He didn't kill her, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see on that. Finally, I just wanted to say I am kind of confused as to why this film is not the first superhero film leading a female character. I think that this film should have taken place 6 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever Civil War actually took place. This film should have happened. Like, this film should have been right after Civil War. Would have been perfect timing. And even then, like, it should have happened after Infinity War. It should have been the first female lead in any MCU film. Like, there is no conceivable reason to me that Captain Marvel should have been the first. I think that it just didn't make any sense, like, at all to me. Um, Captain Marvel didn't do anything really in Endgame, so why was she there? Why did we need to get the Captain Marvel film before that? That's my question at this point, because I truly do not know. I think that um, I think that we care a lot more about Black Widow's character, but the fact that we know that she's dead undercut this film just a little bit, because it was all this character development and character growth and like these pieces coming together for a character that's no longer going to be around. So unless they're gonna have Yelena be the next like Black Widow Avenger moving forward, and it's gonna be a jumping off point for her character, which it very well might be, but I think that is a missed opportunity. They could have had a much more powerful impact at the end of the other film, at the end of Endgame, when we now know that Natasha is dead. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Black Widow film. I really, really enjoyed it. I had a ton of fun watching this film, and it was like just a good time to see. Though I wish that we got this film a lot sooner than we actually did. I do think that it was definitely a worthwhile wait in terms of the past year, but overall this film was really, really good. That's all I have to say for this video. What are your thoughts on the Black Widow film? Did you enjoy it? Did you wish, like me, that we got this film a lot sooner? Because I certainly think it deserved that. And yeah, whatever your thoughts are, if you liked the video, please like this video and subscribe for more content from me on this channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.